Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I'm Shafer Suggs, Duke Women's Basketball graduate, and that's my wonderful father to the left or right of me, Shafer Suggs, former NFL player. Dad, good morning.
Good morning, Faith. How are you?
I'm good. Do you have your mug?
I have my mug. The Suggs mugs have been ordered, so they'll be on their way. But
How are
I
you
have
doing?
my mug.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Nice, beautiful Sunday, Saturday, beautiful Monday. Just kind of hopeful that things are. I saw some really, really powerful, positive protests. That look like we're going in the right direction. I know we got a long way to go, but good morning, cousin.
Yeah. Some great things moving around. I think it's crazy. We're going to look back on this time, or I am.
Okay.
This is going to be in history books. This is going to be something people talk about this year,
Right.
2020. We forgot all about the pandemic. Pandemic's still going on. People are out protesting. Change is being made. Officers are being held accountable. It's a very, very interesting time happening right now. We're seeing a lot of historical changes. So it's very special to be part of, wouldn't you say?
It is. It'll be a part of history. As I remember, growing up in the 60s, those different protests and things, policy changes that impacted our history. I think this is that time again where we're not only taking domestic look at change, but then this is so really profound to see how this topic has opened the eyes internationally, how other countries are supporting Black Lives Matter and this powerful change. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. So a few announcements before we dive into our wonderful show today. Got everyone tuning in, everyone's joining us. Good morning, everybody. Website is up, as you can see. It's faithfamilyfocus.net. All our videos are up. Introduction of who we are, as well as a couple fun blogs. Recently put up a new one, I think yesterday, about how we can help a little summary about what we're going to dive into today. And then a wonderful, of course, Dad, update on our Suggs mugs. They're on the way. Everything is under wraps. We're moving very fast. So those of you who are interested in Suggs mugs, they'll be on the website as well. But before we dive into some wonderful discussions today, we have a great video, because today we're going to talk more about how we can help those of you who've reached out to us, our white allies, other people, non-people of color who want to know how to help the cause, who want to know how to help their brothers and sisters. We have found a wonderful video that my dad, good morning, Suggs mugs. My dad sent me this on Saturday morning, and I watched it. It was really great. So let's dive into this really quick.
Welcome to the first of hopefully many episodes of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. In the midst of all this chaos in our world, so many of y'all have reached out to me, and by y'all, I mean white people, have reached out to me asking, how can I help? How can I join in? How can I stand with you? So I've created this for you. Because in order to stand with us and people that look like me, you have to be educated on issues that pertain to me, and fully educated so that you can feel the full level of pain, so that you can have full understanding. I fervently believe that if the white person is your problem, only the white person can be your solution. And so this is made for you, my white brothers and sisters, to increase your level of understanding so that you can increase your level of compassion and lead ultimately to change. So consider this a safe space to answer so many questions that I've seen from y'all. The first question I've seen a lot of, Emmanuel, why are y'all rioting? I understand protesting, but why riot? And to that I submit this. MLK said that rioting is the language of the unheard. For years, Black people have tried peacefully protesting, going back to 1965 and before with the Selma March, and that didn't work. And then in 2016, Colin Kaepernick, he took a knee, and that agenda got moved to a flag, which was never the goal. He just wanted to raise awareness on social injustice. So that didn't work. And so now we've seen riots because Black people and hurt people are trying to get the attention of the oppressor. They're trying to raise awareness of the oppression. I was biking around Lake Austin the other day, and there was a white girl about 15 meters ahead of me. And as I'm on my bike, I say to her, on your left, because I want to notify her I'm coming so that she can change her course of action. I get 10 meters away and I increase my voice, on your left, because she had yet to move. I get 5 meters away and she's still there, and I say, on your left, because I realize if she doesn't change her course of action, there will be a collision. And as I approach her, I yell, on your left, and we collide. My goal was never to hit her, but because she had her headphones in, she didn't hear me, and so she didn't change her course of action. I believe that that's the same thing Black people are doing now. 1960s, we're yelling, we're oppressed. But the course of action wasn't changed. And so we again yell, we're oppressed, but the course of action wasn't changed. And so again we yell, we're oppressed. And now you see the collision that's occurred in America. So while I don't condone rioting, and I'm sure you don't either, because for the most part, Black people and others that are looting and rioting destructively, they're burning down their own homes. But when you think about the 5 different stages of grief, you come up to one stage, which is called anger. And sometimes emotions, they don't know their actions. I remember my mom, when I was a child, she lost her sister. And I just remember her yelling and screaming. And I come outside my room and I see my mom throwing herself into a wall. And I'm wondering what happened. And my dad tells me that my mom's sister had died. Thinking back on that, throwing yourself into a wall, it's not going to change anything. You're actually harming yourself. But sometimes pain and hurt, it doesn't know how to express itself. You know, another question I get from my white friends, they ask me, why do you think white privilege exists? And I say this, if you and I were in a race and the official at the start line, they held me back for the first 200 meters, and you had a 200 meter then head start, the only way to level out that race is to either stop you from running or put me on a golf cart and catch you up and catch myself up. Well, you see, what we've done in America is we've simply said, okay, Emmanuel, you're now free to run. And we've acted as if it's a fair race, when in all honesty, Black people were held back for hundreds of years. And so if in the late 1960s we say, okay, Black people, you can go now, that's not a fair race. LBJ, he said it best when he said, you can't shackle and chain someone for hundreds of years, liberate them to freely compete with the rest, and still justly believe that you've been fair. So white privilege it's having a head start due to hundreds and hundreds of years of systematic and systemic racism. It's having a head start intrinsically built into your life. It's not saying your life hasn't been hard, but what it's saying is your skin color hasn't contributed to the difficulty in your life. I live in an affluent neighborhood in Austin, Texas, and if I ever go to my mailbox and I see a white woman walking up to the mailbox, I consciously sit in my car because I don't want her to feel like I'm a threat. If I'm on an elevator with a white person, I try to hit the button first and get off the elevator first because I don't want them to perceive me as a threat, because I realize at any point in time, whiteness can be weaponized. We saw that this past week. Amy Cooper, Central Park, the woman who called the cops on a Black man who wanted her to leash her dog because it was illegal to walk your dog without a leash. And she used 2 words that are a death sentence for Black people. When she called the cops, she said, there's a Black man who's threatening my life. Both of those things, as far as when you compile them together, were a lie. Because that Black man, he was a bird watcher. And while so many people saw that incident and they were heartbroken, I, as a Black man, saw that incident and was reminded of 1955. Emmett Till, 14-year-old boy who was lynched, mutilated, and killed by 2 white men because a white woman made a false claim saying that he flirted with her. In 2017, that white woman recanted that story. In 1956, the 2 white men that killed him, they got off. And they admitted that they did it because they knew they couldn't be charged again due to double jeopardy. That, to me, is white privilege. The ability to weaponize your whiteness and the ability to live life unconsciously. Because I, as a Black man, have to calculate every move I make the second I walk outside my house. Another question I get that I'm sure several of y'all have thought, if not your kids have, how come Black people can say the N-word, but we can't? I had to do some research on that to educate myself a little bit further. The N-word is synonymous with oppression, execution, and subordination. Black people were so long treated and viewed as no more than the slave to a master. We were viewed as dirt, and that word is synonymous with that. So there is a visceral reaction whenever we hear that word coming out of someone whose complexion is white that reminds us of the pain of our ancestors. Black people took something that was meant and originally used as evil, and we turned it into a term of endearment. So white people, I submit that you can't, shouldn't, and nor should you ever have a desire to say that word, whether quoting a rap song, a movie, or anything. Because remember, that word is truly synonymous with hatred. The abolitionist Frederick Douglass, he wrote when talking about his master that reading and learning would spoil an N-word. Because remember, Black people are nothing more than a slave to their master. And when you think about, well, then why should Black people saying it? If I can't say it, then you shouldn't either, Black person. We've been oppressed for so long, our rights have for so long been limited, that for you to now try to again limit our speech, it's painful. So that's why, in a nutshell, in a few minutes and seconds, why you can't say the N-word. Another I've gotten so often. How come Black people care more about white on Black crime than Black on Black crime? It's not that we don't care about Black on Black crime, but let me propose this. When a Black person commits a crime, they go to jail. When a white person commits a crime, they get off. And hopefully, they even get arrested. Ahmaud Arbery, the Black man that was chased and gunned down by 2 white men in Georgia. It took us 2 months to arrest those perpetrators. And the only reason we did? Because we saw the video. Imagine if camera phones didn't exist. Black on Black crime is an issue. But if you do the research, high violent crimes are all interracial. Blacks kill Blacks, whites kill whites, Hispanics kill Hispanics. So it's not that we don't care, but it's the same issue as why y'all saying Black Lives Matter when all lives matter. We understand all lives matter, but right now, Black people are dying at the hands of white people, and I can't change that. Only you, my white friends, y'all can change that. So if you want to know how can you help, how can you stand with us, how can you stand with me, you must first educate yourself so you know exactly what you're standing for and why you're standing. Because the only way we can solve this issue is through exposure, through education, through compassion, and through empathy. Thank y'all for tuning in to the first of hopefully many episodes of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. Consider this a safe space to educate yourself and help me help you.
Wasn't that great?
Oh man, it's powerful. I've watched it over and over. And former NFL star, Eagles, Browns, Emmanuel Echo. What a powerful, powerful young man.
Right.
I think I shared it with you. I shared it with Emory. I've shared it with many, many people because it really just covers the scope of everything, every part of the dialogue that needs to be communicated to our world on how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Right. Well, one thing that I love about it was he dove into the Emmett Till trial, which wasn't really a trial, was it? And the one thing that I had a connection to that, one of the best things that we talk about, educating yourself and taking the time to learn through this process of whatever everyone's going through. And when I was at Duke, I had a professor named Tim Tyson. He taught the class Black and White in the South. And Tim Tyson is the person that discovered the woman who supposedly had the interaction with Emmett Till. And he was the one who interviewed her and got her to snitch on herself. And he was able to he wrote a book about it. For those of you watching, go look up Tim Tyson. Great man. How he was able to reserve himself from going off on this woman, I don't know. But
Right.
Very, very amazing that we're still dealing with it in 2016, that she just decided to speak out. But that video was very great and it resonated with me. And I'm glad that we were able to share it with people, because today's show that's a great example of an athlete. He's now on Sports Center. He went to Texas, drafted 6th round by the Browns, played with the Eagles, very well spoken. He broke that down like it was easy. Right?
Oh my God, yes.
So I'm glad that we got to share it. And it's a wonderful transition into Dad. You want to bring into our guests and letting people know?
Well, Friday we had former Chicago Bear, world champion, Super Bowl champion, tight end Emory Moorhead, dear friend, on the show. He had some connectivity issues, and we couldn't keep him on. But he, over the weekend, thought so much about this topic, and we're brothers. We grew up about the same time. We played about the same time, and he texted me, said, "I really want to come back on the show," and obviously I was compelled to do that. We both have been through the journey. We've been through the journey through high school, through college, through pros. We watched the protests. We watched the differences between how players were treated, players of color were treated. We watched the difference, and we watched how history has changed this. And we were talking last night. The one question that we're going to ask you is, what makes what happened to Floyd so different than the others that has evoked such a powerful reaction throughout the whole world? And we spent about a half hour talking about that. But without further ado, Amanda and I love, we served on the NFL Players Association in Chicago board together for many, many years. We obviously stay connected. And as you saw his picture with Devin, he's also a family friend too. So without further ado, let's bring on my dear friend, Emery. Hey, Emery.
Good morning, everyone. Good conversation. Great video. Great video. Put it all together. Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, please.
Well, what was your first initial thought by the video? I know you've seen it, but what is your first initial thoughts?
Well, as you said, it was somebody that put everything together, because so many people have asked, what can I do? And how do we do it? And that's a big, important question, because when you have political and social unrest, you need somebody to put it all together. And while people are protesting in Denver, they're protesting in Boston, they're protesting in Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, unlike a lot of other protests, there's no central figure that can put all of this together. And I think that's what this protest is lacking, is a concrete direction by one person trying to lead this, to get this together. Because right now it's a lot of different protests. In order for this to be successful, there's no Martin Luther King Jr. There's no, Abby Hoffman. There's no one to centralize and put this together. And so I think that is the next step in bringing all this together, is to have somebody, some way, some form of this is what we need to do together.
Right. And Dad, I guess you can kind of kick it off. Is when we speak about people who lead the charge right now, we see a lot of athletes are leading the charge. A lot of athletes. I saw yesterday Elizabeth Cambage with the Las Vegas Aces, WNBA, who's from Australia. She was leading a giant march in Australia. Right? You have LeBron James speaking out. You have so many people who are the faces of our youth and the faces of our TVs constantly speaking out, and it's wonderful. But at the time when the two of you played, what was the sort of protest? How was this received? What was the thoughts around this, Dad?
Well, we had some very dynamic protests. Obviously, the one big one that I remember was the March on Washington for jobs and freedom, protest, systematic disenfranchisement of Black Americans in 1964. And obviously, it was a time when we heard the most powerful speech, "I Have a Dream." And then in 1969, we had the Vietnam War. That was in 1969 that protested against the Vietnam War. And one of the ones I really unbelievable was the Million Man March. And that was to promote unity and family values, Black communities happening in Washington, D.C. Those are just three of them that were just, I thought they were difference makers. Obviously the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Act was a result of that. And hopefully our protest today is going to evoke some type of policy change too. I don't know, Emery, would you agree with that?
Yes, those things growing up were quite dynamic to all people. And just like today, it wasn't just people of color. Everyone came together to protest the Vietnam War. At that time, like Shafer was saying, there's two different groups protesting at the same time. You have the war, and then you have civil rights marches. So there were a lot of different things going on, and I think it made people aware. Also, I think today, which makes these young people so aware, I was thinking about it last night, is that, people were saying, well, the Black History Month, do we do this? Do we need to do this? But you know what? I think it sank in to little kids when they were growing up and they were studying Black History Month, that now they have an opportunity to act on what they actually heard as little kids. And that's why these people young folks are out there now. They can have an opportunity to actually make a difference.
Right.
Right, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I saw a sign when I was looking through, like, we have so many pictures now, we'll dive into this a little bit. I saw a sign that said, "This is not the generation to mess with," right? I thought it was an awesome sign, and it's so much better of a sign than sometimes you see the sign, "We are not our ancestors." And I don't think that's fair, because each generation is different, each generation is educated different. I think this generation is a lot more bold, for sure, because I think that they were educated early on and they saw the examples, and so they are kind of well prepared for this experience. But Dad, can you talk into a little bit about how, being in the NFL at the time, was there certain protests led by players? If not, why not? Can you dive into a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it was very hard for us, and Emory and I spoke about that too. Our voices were extremely silent. I think on the last show we spoke about Muhammad Ali. I mean, powerful athletes, Black athletes, were the ones that kind of led that charge, because we were just put in that lane where we had to stay on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dynamics are a lot different. The ratios of Black players and white players, Black coaches, people in power. I mean, we spoke out in the paper. I mean, in a whole, the NFL players at that time didn't make a lot of money, so we were expendable. Mm-hmm. But being an African American Black player, you were even more expendable if you kind of fell out of line. So I don't remember, Emory, if you can, I don't remember playing from between 1976, 1981. You played obviously a little bit longer, but I don't remember a time, other than our union fighting for our pensions, I don't remember there's a time where Black players were able to take a stand without worrying about repercussions. Would you?
No, you can go down in history and see the repercussions. You could see the Black athlete at the Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Right.
Virtually unheard of after they stood on the podium with their hands raised. They faced a lot of kickback from Americans who didn't understand what they were talking about. And then you have, like you said, Muhammad Ali, that great summit with Lou Alcindor, Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, and Jim Brown.
Jim Brown, right.
But those were the high profile athletes that could take a stand. At that time in the 60s and 70s, there were Black quotas on teams, football teams, baseball teams. You couldn't have more than 3 Black athletes on a baseball team. Otherwise, it got to be too Black. Shafer, you were in New York. I was in New York when the Knickerbockers had like 10 out of 11 players, and they were calling it the you-know-what Bockers. Because there were too many, and the league was getting too Black. And I believe Larry Bird, Magic Johnson saved the league a few years after that, because it was getting too many Black athletes, and people did not want to pay to go see, no matter how good, they didn't want to see an all-Black team. Right. And in football, there were certain positions Black people did not play. They were reserved for the white athlete to keep the team from going all Black. Now it's all changed, and there's a lot more people are playing every position now, and it's much more acceptable. But it was not in the early 70s, late 60s. It just wasn't like that. So a Black athlete didn't have the opportunity to be as vocal as they are today. And I commend all the athletes today for speaking out. And, ironically, again, last night after talking to you, I got to thinking, I said, the reason they have the opportunity to speak out is because of the pandemic. There's nobody working, so there's nobody to fire. So they can say what they really feel right now because they're not going to get suspended for any games. And that's really opened the door for the Black athlete to speak out.
Right. And I also think it's going to be very interesting on July 23rd when the NBA returns, what their statement is going to be. I guess we'll all have to wait and see on that one. But we bring up the current protest. Let's talk 2016 Colin Kaepernick, his experience. I think a lot of people need to do the research on his decision to kneel instead of sit. He reached out to veterans to make the decision what is the most respectful way to peacefully protest, not the flag, but peacefully protest the police brutality and systematic and industrialized racism that is in our country, which I think was a great thing. Why do you think that, one, his protest did not make as big a splash as what we're going through right now? Dad?
Well, again, they were in season and people were afraid to speak for fear of retribution.
Mm-hmm.
And people were afraid to take a knee because they made it very clear, as Jerry Jones spoke right out, you're not going to be on the Cowboys if I catch anybody taking a knee. And those things influence a lot of players. And right now, as I said, nobody's in season. There's nobody to tell them what to do. They're perfectly within their right to speak out, and they feel a little bit better. And I guarantee you, Jerry Jones is steaming up right now, that everybody's talking and speaking and taking a stand. And the NFL commissioner has taken a stand and admitted that he was wrong, the league was wrong, and not acknowledging the fact that, he was speaking for, as you said, racial injustice, police brutality, not trying to make it about the flag, not disrespecting uniformed armed force people. And they just took it, and as they always do, they make it a diversion away from the facts that was trying to be spoken. And today with people, you have protesters doing the right thing, and then you have the rioters coming in afterwards, and that also creates a diversion from the message that, we're trying to get across, and the protesters are trying to get across. So this diversion technique has been used by Donald Trump since the moment he got in office. As soon as something happens to him, he throws out Obama, he'll throw out Hillary, anything to get the heat off of him. And this is the technique that is being used today.
Right. Changing the narrative is powerful. And getting back to the previous question about Black athletes speaking out. See, that was in 2016, Trey.
Mm-hmm.
The Black athletes took a stand and see the repercussions. He's no longer playing in the National Football League. And that kind of leads me to the question I was talking to you before the show. Emery and I spent about 20 minutes talking about this topic. Is what is making what happened to Floyd so different to cause a reaction internationally? Because as you watch the movie, the documentary 13 I watched it 3 times. This has been happening for a long time. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on why this is so different and why we're getting such a reaction?
Here's the thing about time, and one of the best things about social media now, and social media has grown drastically from 2016. I mean, Dad, you're on Twitter. So it's now touching on all generations of people, okay? And the one thing about social media is it's easily accessible, and it's never an in the moment thing. You can find videos, pictures anytime you want by just typing it in, right? In comparison to the TV. Originally, when we talk about past moments of police brutality that we have seen, it's all been on the TV, documented, and then it was gone. Not everybody watches the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock news, right? So the thing about social media is everybody can see, everybody can access the video. The video was also in great clarity. It was up close and personal. We could hear what George Floyd was saying. We could see the tactics. We could see the face of the police officers in the whole process, that 8 minutes and 45 or whatever the time period was going on, right? So we witnessed the murder almost like it was HD. And the thing about social media is it hit social media quickly, right? And it spread fast. And I don't think you guys know Steven Jackson, who played for the Warriors. He also was on a great podcast with Matt Barnes, All the Smoke. He was related to George Floyd. Okay, so we have an NBA player now related to this man who has been murdered on TV, a black man, right? And Steven Jackson, the NBA, are now leading the charge, right? So now you have these voices speaking out, sharing the video that Twitter has not censored. Everybody can watch someone die on Twitter. Twitter is, they don't censor things on social media. So that is how fast it spread. But not only that, is there's a pressure now. Black people are applying a pressure on white people to make a change, right? They're now more bold to speak out. A lot of pressure. We had a thing on social media called Blackout Tuesday, where all of social media did not participate in anything else but starting to spread the Black Lives Matter movement. So everybody on Instagram posted or Twitter posted a black square, right? And the square was for Blackout Tuesday, June 2nd, where they spread links for petitions for people to sign, links on where to donate money in your communities, how to schedule protests and rallies. A lot of things, and people were donating money, signing petitions for cases. I know I probably signed like 10 petitions for cases that I have learned about while studying this cause that people are now bringing about and spreading on Twitter again. They're spreading it out easily accessible to the younger generation and all the other generations that are now able to access this platform. So we talk now, Colin Kaepernick's probably like, well, I tried to tell all you this was going on and nobody was on my side, but now everybody's on my side, NFL, because they have to be. They have to be. Everybody is being forced to be involved, and that's why everybody's asking, how can we help? How can we make a change? See now, right? And everyone's like, well, we tried to show you around the king, right? It was right there. What do you mean? Black people were like, there's 400 years of this. The results are in front of you. But now social media is like making this so easily accessible. You can watch the video. I could type in George Floyd right now. The video will pop up 10 times. All you got to do is just pick one, right? So the resources are so much more heightened, even from 2016, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful. That's powerful. Yeah. Well,
but that's a great thing. It's a great thing. It's a great thing because athletes have the opportunity to say whatever they want and speak, and everybody can hear it. Because in 10 minutes, 10 million retweets is about going to 10 million people, right? That fast.
Right.
And that's why we had the situation with Drew Brees, because Drew Brees' video spread extremely fast, and then other NFL players now are critiquing. I mean, Dad, we touched on this a little bit, but Emery, what was your opinion of the Drew Brees? I'm gonna call it.
Well, initially, I was a little bit taken back by it, and then of course he quickly reversed field after he saw the feedback he was getting, and I thought his apology was sincere, and he really wants to do more. I mean, this is a guy that gave like 10 million, to social causes in New England or New Orleans. I mean, he's a giving guy, and I don't know him personally, so it's hard to say where his heart is. At first, I thought, well, the first thing you say is what you really believe. But then his apology seemed to be sincere, and he seemed to want to get on board, and he seemed to want to put his money where his mouth is. And not only that, but he seemed to want to be a part of the solution, as he said, and not a cause of the solution. So this is a guy, like I said, that donated after Katrina, tons of money to help people, and he pledged money to help these social causes as well. And he is a big voice in the NFL, and so it's going to be interesting going forward how he adjusts to his teammates, how his teammates adjust, whether they forgive him. And again, it's not just saying, he has to be doing the right thing. And so that's going to be interesting when it comes back. And, here's a quarterback in the Deep South. So his opinion is going to be felt by everyone.
Right. I think it's hard. I think this will all be associated with who he is, and I think it's unfair because people do know that he was very key when Katrina happened in that community in New Orleans. We all watched it. Drew Brees was the quarterback of that city at the time, so it was hard for me when I first watched the video, and I was like, wait, but Drew Brees is in New Orleans. Drew Brees, how could he be so out of touch with what's going on? But as we saw in his apology, obviously someone educated him on why the statement was wrong and it showed that he had not really been paying attention to what was really going on and what he was a part of, which is powerful because Drew Brees has kneeled before. Drew Brees kneeled, right? So it kind of now is looking at him like, well, like a lot of people are making statements, but it's out of ignorance and just because they just don't know. They don't know better, right? Because they didn't do the research, didn't have their ears open to really learn and understand what's going on around them, which is why a lot of people right now are confused and they're trying to figure it out by asking how they like that. But Dad, how about we dive into this a little bit? The NFL released some backlash or some approval nods when they made the decision to think about making a new rule that teams that hired coaches of minority would receive benefits, or even in the third round, like maybe 16 spots up. I mean, something along that line. They're trying to figure it out. What is your opinion, initial opinion? What was your first opinion when you had heard it, and then how did it gradually grow?
Well, another topic that Emory and I talked about systematically, there has been disparity between the number of African American athletes and Black coaches. We look at Lovie Smith, you look at Herman Edwards, you look at Tony Dungy. Those three great coaches probably should have been coaches 10 years before they were actually head coaches. So this is something that has existed for a long, long time. And, ironically, this happened a little bit before the Floyd incident. So, we have been pushing for this for a long, long time, and we have a long way to go. And I think again, it's talking is one thing. It's policy right now. It's not policy right now. They got to vote on it, but it's just something that needs to change. Because just like what Emory talked about, and we played where we only played certain positions. We only played certain positions. There was probably a quota on the number of African American coaches that were on the team. A lot of times they were running back coaches or defensive back coaches. No offensive coordinators, right? Because that was a coaching position of intelligence and leadership, right? And so it has been a long time coming. And every time something like this happens, it's a step in the right direction. But I would love to see that gap has to close, Faith, Emory, very, very fast, because there's a tremendous amount of pressure right now for that to happen. Would you agree, Emory?
I would, and I don't think that, offering a draft choice to hire a Black coach, that's ridiculous. I mean, you got to hire the coach because he's a good coach. You don't hire him because you want to move up in the draft. That was really a slap in the face to all coaches. Saying, because when they get the job, then did he get the job because of his ability, or did he get the job because the team can move up in the draft choice? And there's so many Black coaches that are well qualified. And as you said, when we came up in the NFL in the late 70s, early 80s, there was never more than one Black coach on the team. I mean, and that guy handled all the Black athletes, especially like when you were in college. If there was a Black coach, they sent him over. He was the one that's going to handle any kind of questions a young kid might have about, whether he's playing, whether he's, really wanted on his team, whatever kind of questions. It was usually you go see the Black coach. It was usually the running back coach, as Shafer said, and because all the running backs were Black, and that was just, we've come so far from that now. To sit there and offer draft choices is just that's not going to please anybody.
Right.
And I had this discussion with Devin, my brother, and when I had told him, I said, "Well, did you see what's on ESPN right now? What's your opinion?" He was like, "That's stupid. Like that makes us look bad and da da da." And I said, "Well, I have to break something down to you." I said, "But would you still go take the job?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know." And I said, I hope you go take the job, because at the end of the day, you're taking that step forward is you making a change, right? Go and chase your money. Don't ever sacrifice your money, because at the end of the day, even though this is happening, the way it's happening, this is still an opportunity for you to try to make a change in your own way.
Yeah.
That brings us on the discussion of affirmative action, right? It happens in
Right.
college, student athletes, or when they let Black students in, diversify the university. They put the Black child on the brochure, right? To make the university look more and more diverse. And then you have the people criticize that because it's not fair, or it doesn't make sense. Some kids are losing opportunities to Black kids because they want to diversify the school. But that brings on the topic of privilege. When you look at it, these kids are already 10 steps behind the starting line, right? So you're basically just trying to evil the playing field in some sort of way for these kids to get opportunities. And I don't see how it's any different than when we talk about legacy students. So when we go into Ivy Leagues, but
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
Dad, can you dive a little bit into what's the first step for people to really get through this? How can we look at these sort of things as fans watching the game? I mean, what is the first step through all this?
Well, I think the video that you showed with Emmanuel Echo is a start.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is education.
Mm-hmm.
Watching, having dialogue that's uncomfortable, right? So the acknowledgement, the acceptance, okay? And for what I wanted to say, what Emery was talking about, Drew Brees, there's got to be a hopeful willingness to have a level of forgiveness for him and give him an opportunity, because I think sincerely in his heart, there were pressure, but maybe it's opened his eyes. And that's what's going to have to happen. Sometime in order to change, you have to hit bottom, right? And all that pressure got him to a point where he hopefully had to change. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what we have visibility to, a lot of this violent behavior towards Black men being lynched, being brutally beaten, is enough to evoke that kind of change. And then there has to be a level of acknowledgement of that. And I was watching the 13th, and I was like, okay. And it was it's appropriate that documentary was done, 4 years ago. But having that kind of visibility of watching those kind of documentaries, Faye, those kind of movies, having these kind of dialogues is the first step. And then we have to forgive, and we have to begin the process of healing with this open, honest, God-like dialogue.
Right. And Emery, what do you think about that?
Well, there has to be dialogue, as Shafer said. But the thing, I think the key is, there has to be change. And there has to be change, not just from Black people. It's up to white people to support this cause. And the one thing that's kind of missing that would be very helpful, and nothing we can do about it, but we need the young people on campuses. Mm-hmm. That's where it spreads, from campus to campus to campus to campus. If these campuses were open, think about the protests. They're just in the streets right now. If they were on the campuses, that would be very powerful for this movement. And because of the pandemic, they're not out there right now. But that's what we need. We need people to come together. When people come together, like in a campus, 21, 19, 20, all those people, those are changing lives forever.
Right.
When they make a stand like that, when they're a young person. And I wish we could have these kids in school, but it's understanding because of the pandemic. And I think that also causes, because of the pandemic, it causes people from all over the world, because they've been bottled up for so long, to come out and protest because they're seeing it. Like Shafer said, or like Faye said, you're seeing them with the knee on the neck and the guy dying right in front of you. And this has caused a worldwide phenomenon. But we have to keep it going. It has to stay consistent. It can't die out in a month because we got something else to do. And that's where I think we're missing the college campus kids that will keep this thing going, because eventually all these people in the street are going to be back at work, and they're not going to have time for this. And they might be threatened by their employers. So, it's got to stay consistent. We need someone to lead this charge. And usually it's young people on college campuses, and I think that's what's missing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that these college campuses, the one thing I would criticize about when I was in school was the lack of information on how to vote, the lack of information how to get an absentee ballot, how to find the polls where kids can get involved. And one thing is college coaches we've been discussing is taking November 3rd, no practice, anything, and just taking the kids to go learn how to vote.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Ballots.
Yeah.
Because that's the one missing piece is with college students. It's confusing. They have a lot going on, and there's not a lot of people telling them this is the steps, right? And so I think that's the one of the biggest steps is educating these kids who are so passionate about the cause, which they are, right? This generation, and showing them how they can be involved. And how they can place their ballots. And a lot of kids are on campus from out of state, and that was one of my biggest criticisms when I was in school was the lack of information on how we can vote, where we go. So one thing is the two of you are home. What are you working on? What are you practicing within your own home during this time? What are you teaching in a way? Dad, you can kick this one off.
Well, that's a real easy answer because we're doing it 3 times a week. Just having a platform, having a platform to be able to honestly, sincerely share our real, specific, factual information out there. And having the courage to be able to do that and evoke really honest dialogue. So I'm very blessed to be able to have this platform, this forum, to bring on really good guests like Embry and the people that we bring on. And then you obviously has taken, just being that generation, 22, 23 years old, it's the important generation, and especially the fact that you're an athlete. You're in an athletic environment because that's where a lot of leadership, a lot of people that look up to athletes, that's where a lot of people will be more open to listen, right? So that was the easy answer for me.
Right, and
Yeah. Well, this is just so ironic that Memorial Day weekend, my neighbor, his family, and the neighbor next to him and their family, we did have this discussion about things. And then the very next week is when Karen in New York in Central Park has her incidents with a black man that was a bird watcher. And then this happened like 2 days later. And so the next time I saw him, I said, look, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? It's hard being a black man in America. I said, because all of this happened, and they admitted there needs to be more discussion on this because they were taken back that it happened so quickly after we had the discussion on Memorial Day that just the next 2 incidences happened that week. And so I think what you have to do is you just have to continue to have this conversation with people, and they're tough conversations. And people don't want a discussion. And everybody wants to hear from the athlete until it's a tough conversation to have. While you're talking football or something, it's an easy conversation. But having a conversation about racism and having a conversation about, what do we do to curb racism, those are tough questions. And if you're not with the problem, if you're not trying to cure the problem, then you are the problem.
Right.
As far as racism. And it's not, I'm a non-racist. It's either you got to be anti-racist, and you have to fight for all things like black people have been fighting for the last 50 years to make change, because it hasn't happened. You can go back 50 years and we've talked, we've had protests, and nothing has really changed. As you can see, the only thing that changed is that there's a camera now, and people are actually seeing what black people have been going through, starting back with Rodney King and his beat down in Los Angeles, and it's still going on today. Just like you all are in Chicago, and I saw the video with the 2 women out at the shopping mall, and it looked like mob action by the police. They're banging in the windows, breaking the windows, and then it ends up being, okay, I guess they weren't looters, but what the heck? The cars all beat up, the women are traumatized, and this is after everything that's happened in the past week. So it continues to go, and the only thing we can do is have, better police training, have the police be more accountable for their actions, and getting rid of this. If my life was threatened, I can get off. If I feel my life was threatened by this man or woman, then the chances are, they're not going to even make it to trial. They're going to get out before. So there's got to be more accountability for police officers, and there's got to be changes in the department. And I know that Minnesota has already said they want a complete change. I forget the phrase they're using, but all these things are different, but it's got to start at the top, and that's where we're missing. See, we don't have a president that wants to take responsibility for anything,
Right.
and it's got to start at the top and feed down. You can't have Minnesota doing one thing, Chicago doing another thing, Detroit doing another thing. This thing has to come from a national top perspective in order for it to trickle down and be effective in all departments.
Well, that's great dialogue. Faith, I want to ask you, I was just thinking about this. Emory, you have biracial kids. Aaron, you have biracial kids. We have done 2 great episodes last week on that. Have you had any conversations with your son, your kids, on how they are having these kind of conversations?
Well, my kids, they're privileged, no doubt, because believe me, the color of your skin makes a difference in how white people react to you. If you have dark skin, they immediately are afraid. If you have light friends, they think that you're their friend now. You can be my friend because you're not threatening me because of the color of your skin. And my kids recognize this, as soon as they entered the workforce. They saw the difference between somebody, and they have cousins that are darker, and then they don't have no problem telling them you're getting over it because you're light skinned. I don't get those same opportunities. So, and these are facts, and my kids are great kids, and they have conversations with my son is a coach, and he went through a lot of different colleges. He coached at Stanford, he coached at Virginia Tech in the South, he coached at Vanderbilt in the South, he coached at A&M. And these are things that, help them get in to these homes and relate to these kids. And now he's a coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. And my daughter went right in the corporate workplace, but they understood that they had opportunities because they were educated.
Right.
They went to great schools in high school. They found out what they wanted to do. All their friends are what they wanted to be. And they did the same thing. They wanted to be successful. And education is the way you get there. And so first you have to be educated, and then you get an opportunity. And when you get the opportunity, you have to make the most of it. And that's been what we have preached to them their whole life.
Awesome.
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah. Dad, in our last couple minutes, what has your dialogue been with your son who's about to enter a very interesting space in the Ivy League?
Right. So yeah, that's been a constant conversation, and that was part of the conversation when we were having our decision about going there. I mean, when we went to visit, I made him very aware, and I wanted him to draw his own opinion on what he saw, what he felt comfortable with, and that's the question. And as he said when he was on the show, he was comfortable that he saw a lot of kids of color. He saw some diversity there. He saw coaches, not only one coach, but a couple coaches on the coaching staff. The director of business development, player development, was an African American coach. And I remember one of the one coach, the older coach, who was sort of the ambassador, made a point that our school, not like some of the other Ivy League schools, have really made a conscious effort to strive toward some diversity. So we'll keep our eyes open. Again, I had him approach just like I had to approach life. You have to work hard, okay? And just know that you might be behind the 8 ball. Just assume that that's going to happen, but don't allow anything to hold you back. And if you have to run that much further, or practice that much harder, just be prepared that just might happen, because like Emery said, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So, he's open, his eyes are open, and then me as a parent, I just got to sit back and be there if he needs
Right. And I guess we'll get to this eventually for another show, but he's playing a predominantly white position according to how society has looked at it and how football has looked at it. And lovely, it has changed a lot, and especially in the last season. of the NFL. And I know that we had a wonderful conversation, him and I, about understanding how Black quarterbacks are perceived, understanding how it's a different dialogue and diction in comparison of athletic to intelligence. Understand that you have to work hard. You might have to be there 10 minutes earlier than the other quarterback. You might need to get there, stay an hour later than the other one. You have to make sure your grades never falter, because that's a stereotype on a lot of Black athletes is their grades, because it's the lazy stereotype of the Black American, right? So having these discussions, these dialogues are wonderful, and I'm glad we both touched on it. And I'm glad that a lot of people are seeing that these conversations are happening in young age. And I can promise you, it's a sign of privilege if you never have this conversation with your kids. And so understanding your privilege, educating yourself, accepting and acknowledging everything that's going on with you is one of the best ways to help. And also watch videos like the ones we shared with you. But thank you, Emery. It was awesome to have you on today. A lot of great gems that you shared with us today.
A lot.
Thank you, Faith. I'm glad you're doing something during this pandemic time. I think it's commendable for you to start this show and to have these conversations, so that there's no idle time. Is you have to do something, and I'm so glad you took on this forum with your dad to bring other athletes in and talk about so many different things. Before you know it, you might be down there at NBC Tower in New York. So. Keep the faith and keep working.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery.
But thank you everyone for joining us today on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Once again, we're praying for all of you out there fighting for your voice to be heard. We're making some great changes in this awesome historical moment to be in. Dad, thanks for joining us today. We want to thank our platforms, Amazon Fire, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and most importantly, out of Phoenix, Arizona, E360 TV. Again, this is Faith Family Focus, where we want to use our faith as a vehicle to help heal and sustain others on their path to strengthen the family core. And we'll leave with you with our new slogan: let go, let God, let go, let faith, let go, let love. Thank you, everyone.